Los escándalos y errores que se cometen dentro de la administración de Donald Trump son tantos que a veces es difícil mantenerse al día con tantas cosas pasando diariamente. Mientras que el presupuesto de Donald Trump trata de hundir a Estados Unidos y llevarlo a ser liderado por multimillonarios, y por supuesto una guerra comercial de la que pasamos página muy rápido, porque Donald Trump aún no cumple ninguna de las promesas que hizo sobre sus aranceles. No ha hecho absolutamente ningún trato y actualmente se encuentra desmoronándose y prácticamente admitiendo su derrota en uno de sus principios más fundamentales. Y vamos a entrar en ese informe del Wall Street Journal. Pero antes quiero comenzar en cómo Donald Trump está presentando estos acuerdos. Acuerdos que, te recuerdo, no ha hecho. Miren el clip.
Yeah, Mr. President, you have a deadline coming up on trade in 2 weeks. Which countries, if any, on trade, on tariffs, yeah. Sir, which countries, if any, are close to agreements with the administration?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've made a deal with China. We've made a deal with probably 4 or 5 different countries. With the UK, it was a great deal for both. And we're in the process of making some others. But ultimately, in fact, Scott is here. And Howard Lutnick, these 2 guys have been doing an incredible job, and the people that work with them have been doing an incredible job. But, you know, we have 200 countries, you could say 200 countries plus. We can't do that. So at a certain point over the next week and a half or so, or maybe before, we're going to send out a letter. We talked to many of the countries, and we're just going to tell them what they have to pay to do business in the United States. And it's going to go very quickly.
Pero ni siquiera existe un acuerdo con China, y de hecho no pareciera que hubiera ningún acuerdo con China en camino. Donald Trump había dicho que ya había un acuerdo con China. De hecho, Donald Trump no ha parado de decir que el gobierno de China quiere hacer un acuerdo con Estados Unidos, que no para de recibir llamadas, que no paran de decirles que se mueren por hacer un acuerdo con Estados Unidos. Y de hecho habló de que el señor Japón quiere un acuerdo con él. El acuerdo que se supone que iba a suceder con Canadá se arruinó por completo. Todo porque Donald Trump se puso sentimental. No sé, tal vez el primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, se burló de él en el G7. Y tal vez después de esto ya nadie quería ser su amigo. Pero la realidad es que no hay ningún acuerdo en camino. Y no va a pasar porque simplemente Donald Trump no es un maestro negociador como dice ser. Sé que esto es sorprendente para todos de que Donald Trump sea incapaz de llevar una negociación en paz. Pero sí, se tenía que decir, Donald Trump no es un buen negociador. Obviamente esto es irónico, Donald Trump nunca ha sido un buen negociador y mucho menos ahora que tiene la incapacidad cognitiva que tiene. Y yo creo que más que eso, mucha gente se está dando cuenta de que es un verdadero tonto. Más que darse cuenta de que no puede negociar, es que es un presidente incapaz e inepto para ser presidente, ya que Donald Trump realmente ha ido muy lejos. Y uno de los mejores ejemplos de esto, y la razón por la cual ahora vemos a la administración retroceder, es un clip sobre los plátanos, o guineos, o bananas, o como le digan en tu país, que ocurrió aproximadamente hace 3 semanas, y que explica la decisión de Donald Trump de finalmente venirse abajo. Miren el clip, por favor.
And his tariff chaos has nakedly increased the cost of goods. The estimates are that for consumers in my area, suburban Philadelphia, $2,000 at least a year increases on goods. I'll give you an example of one. Bananas. What's the tariff on bananas? Americans, by the way, love bananas. We buy billions of them a year. I love bananas. What's the tariff on bananas?
The tariff on bananas would be representative of the countries that produce them.
And what's that tariff?
Generally 10%.
Correct, 10%. Walmart has already increased the cost of bananas by 8%.
But as countries do deals with us, that will go to zero. As countries do deals with us, that will go to zero. But the cost is on the American consumer now and on the businesses with the confusion now. Mr. Secretary, I believe you know better. I believe you recognize that a trade deficit is not something to fear. I believe you know that predictability, stability is essential for businesses. I wish you would show that truth to this administration. And I yield back.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
Would you mind, Mr. Chairman, if I make one quick comment to the end? Would that be okay?
I'm sorry?
Would you mind if I make one quick comment to the representative?
Sure. Please.
There's no uncertainty if you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't produce bananas in America.
Building in America and paying no tariff is very, very clear.
We cannot build bananas in America.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
Esto es tan importante de considerar cuando hablamos de estos aranceles y de cuán poco lo logran. Son simplemente absurdos. ¿Recuerdan cuando Estados Unidos terminó poniendo aranceles a pingüinos? ¿Qué sentido tenía eso? Luego descubrió que un algoritmo de inteligencia artificial estaba generando lo que sea. Cosas oscuras y aranceles sin sentido se impondrían sobre países sin ninguna lógica ni razón de ser. No había ni siquiera una estrategia ni un plan. Era simplemente pura incompetencia. Pero bueno, esto no debería de sorprender a absolutamente nadie. Era Donald Trump quien lo estaba haciendo al final del día. Pero esa es la razón por la que ahora está retrocediendo. Porque porque incluso su propia administración se da cuenta de lo idiota que es esto. Y podemos verlo de hecho en el informe del Wall Street Journal. Estados Unidos podría suavizar los aranceles sobre productos que no pueden cultivar aquí, dice un funcionario. La administración Trump podría considerar extensiones de aranceles para productos que no puedan cultivarse fácilmente dentro de los Estados Unidos, como granos de cacao o café, dice el secretario de Agricultura Bro Rollins. Actualmente esos productos están incluidos en aranceles generalizados y los demócratas han atacado a los republicanos por aumentar los costos. Todo está sobre la mesa en este momento, dijo Rollins en una entrevista con el Wall Street Journal y otro medio de comunicación. Sí creo que para ciertos productos que no podemos producir aquí es importante tener una compensación completa y una estrategia robusta que apoye todo lo anterior. Mantener bajos los precios de los alimentos para los estadounidenses, asegurarse de que la inflación baje como se prometió, pero también promover nuestros productos en el mundo. ¿Cómo le tomó a Estados Unidos meses llegar a esto? Si no pueden crear esto dentro de Estados Unidos, entonces ponerle un arancel a su importación, para que la gente pueda comprar la versión americana del producto que no existe en Estados Unidos. Espero que te des cuenta del sinsentido que acabo de decir. Pues bueno, esto es lo que hizo Donald Trump. No solo lo pensó, esto hizo el ponerle aranceles a productos que no había dentro de Estados Unidos. Yo he llegado a pensar que él ni siquiera sabe qué es un arancel como tal. Bueno, aparte de cobrar más dinero, creo que no sabe lo que hace un arancel o cómo puede afectar a una empresa o a una industria. Esa es mi conclusión constante, porque estas personas actúan de una forma que no tienes otra forma de verlo. Porque si tú sabes cómo funciona un arancel, no haces todo lo que ha hecho Donald Trump ni toda su administración. Y ahora está admitiendo la derrota, diciendo cosas como que bueno, si no podemos cultivar granos de café ni bananas, debemos tal vez quitarle aranceles a países que nos importen esto a Estados Unidos. Sí, Estados Unidos actualmente está gobernado por idiotas. Personas que no tienen la capacidad de dirigir un país. Y aparte de todo, son personas extremadamente crueles en la forma que aplican sus políticas. Y por supuesto me refiero al desastroso proyecto de ley de Donald Trump, proyecto que vimos cómo fue duramente criticado por el senador Murphy. Así que miren el clip, por favor.
I mean, the only people that matter to Republicans right now are corporate CEOs and billionaires. Everybody else doesn't matter, because if you don't belong to Mar-a-Lago, you aren't a human being, according to this version of the Republican Party. And that is deeply sad. Even people like Josh Hawley, who were, kind of saying the right things for a while, maybe the Republican Party shouldn't be kicking the working poor off their health care, have fallen in line and are apparently going to vote for this thing in the end. If you are anybody except for a very, very rich person who can show up and pay the membership dues at Mar-a-Lago, you do not matter for this Republican Party. And you are seeing that on display right now, every single amendment that they reject.
And yet what's interesting is that working class people do see Donald Trump as somebody who sees them. And that's part of the reason why they say they voted for him. And when asked about the Democratic Party, they say the Democratic Party has moved away from us and what we care about and what we need. They don't see me any longer. This is what they say. I'm not sugarcoating it. So how do the Democrats, if as you argue, the Republicans really only care about the Mar-a-Lago set, how do the Democrats convince these voters that they were fooled?
Well, I mean, the first thing we need to do is just explain what this bill is. And, the polling varies. Obviously, it's a deeply unpopular bill, but there still aren't enough people who know what's actually going on here. Because you're right, a lot of people, heard Donald Trump say during the campaign, and they've heard him say over the last few months, we are not cutting Medicaid. I mean, he still says that. And yet this is the biggest cut in Medicaid in the history of the country. 24% of Americans, working Americans, get their health care from Medicaid. They're going to lose it under this bill, all to finance a tax cut for his Mar-a-Lago friends. We've got to tell that story all around the country. I was stuck here this weekend, but I was due to be in Wichita, Kansas. I was due to be in a deep red state, because Democrats have got to be all over the country explaining to people that they got duped by Donald Trump. But then the second thing we need to do is stop offering incremental solutions. I mean, when this fight is over, yes, the Democrats are going to have to tell people what we're for, and that should be a massive increase in the minimum wage. That should be making it a whole lot easier for people to join labor unions so they can boost their wages. That should be breaking up these big monopolies, corporate behemoths that are keeping wages suppressed. People don't want marginal changes to our economy. They want the Democratic Party to be for really big, bold ideas. And if we pair those really big, bold ideas together with a constant focus on shouting from the rooftops about this bill, the most massive transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy in the history of the country, then I think we have a shot to win back a lot of those working class and poor voters that did vote for Trump in this last election.
On the subject of Democrats winning, what did you think of the Mamdani win for the Democratic primary here in New York City? Is that Is that a roadmap for what the Democrats should do?
Well, to an extent. I mean, listen, there are certain things that he stands for and says that I don't agree with, but I think you have to pay attention to the fact that you had a candidate in New York City that was talking every single day about the cost of living, and he was proposing really big, sometimes radical ideas to take power from folks who have way too much of it, like the big realty companies that are jacking up rents in New York City and transferring it to regular people. He did have a laser-like focus on cost of living, on shifting power to people who don't have enough of it. And I think if the Democratic Party, writ large, spent as much time or as big a percentage of our communications time talking about the cost of living as Mamdani did in New York, we'd probably win a lot more elections.
Part of the reason why I think Republicans have been so successful in telling people that they're going to fight for them and that these Medicaid cuts aren't really Medicaid cuts or is the argument that they're taking it away from people who shouldn't be here in the first place. They're saying they're going to undocumented immigrants. They're the ones stealing from you. They're the ones that are making your lives harder. They're the ones that are suppressing wages. What should the Democratic Party line be on immigration? Because that does seem to be what people are able to grab onto. The ones that voted for Donald Trump, they will say, I don't like this idea that undocumented immigrants are getting more benefits than I am. So what is the Democratic line on that?
Okay, first, we shouldn't have any shame or any hesitation in coming after the central lies that they tell. Medicaid does not fund health care for people who are here without documentation. So this bill has nothing to do with taking people who are here illegally off of the rolls of Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't cover those people. Second, we need to attack the idea that immigrants pose a very unique safety threat to American citizens. This fact may be inconvenient for Republicans, but people who are new to this country commit crimes at a rate lower, not higher, than people who were born in the United States of America. So don't have any shame in telling the true story about immigrants here in the United States. But second, yes, we have to take the question of border security more seriously. For a long time, voters didn't think we cared about it because Republicans talked about it 10 times more than we did. I spent all of 2023 and 24 writing a big, tough, bipartisan border security bill that put billions of new dollars in border security, that fundamentally changed our asylum laws, that would make it harder for people to come here if they didn't have a compelling asylum claim. And I think Democrats should be boldly running on a lawful, compassionate way to get tough at the border. We shouldn't hide from that issue, as I think we did for a long time.
Yeah, that was a bill that looked like it was going to pass. It was a conservative bill, conservative-leaning bill, but Donald Trump got involved while he was running for president and sank it among Republicans. All right.
Es claro, la crueldad siempre es el objetivo del movimiento MAGA y la incompetencia siempre es el resultado esperado de ellos mismos. Eso es lo que estamos viendo actualmente en Estados Unidos, lo vemos una y otra vez. Pero bueno, para mí lo más importante es saber qué te pareció todo lo que viste, lo entendiste. Me encantaría que lo pongas en los comentarios, por favor. Me encanta saber tu opinión al respecto de todo esto. Está de más decirlo, pero si te gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.